Hello and welcome. My name is Blessing Moses and this is The Whole Scope. The Whole Scope is a program that talks about the plight, the challenges and the cries of original inhabitants in FCT. And today on The Whole Scope, we're going to be talking about community health. As part of a service delivery, community health is very important to the people of FCT. When it comes to health, health is paramount in every community, and it is important that everybody who is in a particular society or community is healthy for the growth of any society. And to talk about this issue further, we are here with Mr. Bassi, the Executive Director of Hip City Innovation Center. Sir, you're welcome. Today we pick service delivery and our bone of contention is community health. What do you think is community health? Can you share more light and how does it affect the people of FCT?
Okay, thank you very much. Community health has to deal with the level of care that a community is exposed to, how well or what kind of medical services do the people have access to. So basically that's it. And for those who are in rural communities, their point of call is always the primary health care center.
That's interesting. So do you think the government has been effective in providing healthcare services for the original inhabitants?
It's a dicey question, basically, but what I'd say is I think the government is doing its best to provide because health is a human right guaranteed by the Constitution and also guaranteed by the Global Action, that's the Sustainable Development Plan. And it's guaranteed in every other human rights charter that is out there. So basically, the government is doing its bit, but then also in terms of if we want to narrow down to the original inhabitants of the FCT, I'd like to draw a dichotomy and say that for the original inhabitants of the FCT who live within peri-urban areas and within urban areas, the service delivery is high as compared to those who live in very rural and remote communities. And so I can't say if they are doing enough or they are not doing enough. But what I can say is that there is a lot of room for improvement. I say this because there are building blocks to health systems. So you talk about leadership and governance, you talk about service delivery, you talk about healthcare financing, you talk about human resource for health, and then you also talk about health management information system. All of this, about 6 building blocks, we may not concern ourselves with them, but the one that is really particular is service delivery, and you also talk about the governance and the healthcare financing. So first, the government in this case, Abuja is a really, has a special status. Okay, so the federal government owns Abuja. Then it is being administered by the FCT ministry. So is the federal government doing enough to provide health services to Abuja? I would want to use a blanket no. This is to say that if you look at the budget of the FCT for 2022, this is 2023, the budget of the FCT was released or was signed very late into the year 2022. I think that was either October and then running into December. So imagine that the whole year is running out and the agencies don't have any budget to run. So what does that mean? So the FCT Primary Healthcare Board, which is the line agency for providing health services to the people, if they do not perform, you can't really say it is because they don't want to perform, but because of the limitations that they have. And this spreads across. So yes, I think that the government needs to do more, knowing fully well that Abuja, the original inhabitants of the FCT, depend on them, for funding to deliver basic healthcare services to them. So in terms of service delivery, in places like Amak and Buhari, which are very urban areas, you find out that the healthcare service delivery is higher than what you would find in places like Kwali, Kuje, and Gwagwalada.
Thank you very much. So if we are to compare the service delivery in health in FCT and in other states that you have visited? Which will you think is better?
Like I did mention, there are indicators for measuring how healthcare delivery or the health system, how effective or ineffective that is. But I'd like to say that the FCT Primary Healthcare Board is doing its best to provide healthcare services to the people. Very recently, I think late last year and early last 2 weeks, myself and my organization, we've been part of the annual operational procedures from the FCT Primary Healthcare Board. So what they have done, just to close this service delivery deficit or gap, is that they have called all stakeholders together to say, this is our budget for the year. These are the things we want to achieve within this year. And within our budget, this is what we're expecting from the FCT budget. But then we cannot deliver optimum service if we just stick to the budget. So they have that AOP, which chronicles what they intend to do across the various tiers of healthcare. Okay, maternal health, family planning, and all of that. So they are doing what they can do, but like I did say earlier on, there's that limitation of funds. From the side of the government to the government. So if the line agency does not have adequate funding, you also know that they are limited in terms of how their output. But I do know that other donors have been supporting the work that they do, and that has helped in augmenting that deficit that they've been experiencing. But generally, are these things that we would like to flag, that we would like to see some improvement? Definitely. One thing that if you go across the 6 area councils and you visit the over 60, 70 primary healthcare centers, one thing you would find is the inadequacy in terms of the health human resource. So there are many PHCs that you would visit and they don't have a qualified nurse manning that primary healthcare center. Some don't even have midwives. Most of the primary healthcare centers are being run by CHOOS, and CHOOS are community health extension workers. So these are the people manning most and then relying so much on volunteers. So you can see that if you don't have capable hands manning the primary healthcare centers, you cannot also say that the performance of these centers would be optimum. But they also are aware of this challenge, and it's something that we have reported to them. Another issue that I know gives me worry, gives a lot of original inhabitants worry, is the infrastructure of the primary healthcare centers. Many of those primary healthcare centers, the walls are cracked, some are operating within a cubicle. So again, like I did say, the primary healthcare, not like I'm holding brief, but we need to just balance it out. I also do know that they have been, with the efforts of partners and some of the other development partners, have been trying to rehabilitate some structures of PHC. Another thing that is also really critical is wash facilities in PHCs. So you move into some PHCs and they don't have access to water, and you know that almost every clinical service requires water, to be done. So it's really saddening that you would visit a primary healthcare center and they don't have access to water. They rely either on stream or they rely on Merua. And then you ask yourself, how many Merua can they buy to take on these clinical services to the end? So those are some of the issues that I feel that when you sum all of them together, you would say that there's a lot of room for improvement that they need to do. So one, if you don't have the human resource to undertake these clinical services, then you cannot say that your performance is at par. Then lastly, something I'd like also to flag off, or flag up rather, is the issue of security. So you find that most of these PHCs are built without any perimeter fence. and then the issue of electricity. Most of the primary healthcare centers are not connected to the grid system. So you find by the design of primary healthcare centers in Nigeria, PHCs are supposed to run for 24 hours. But you find that in most PHCs in remote communities, they majorly operate when there is sunlight. So between the hours of 8 a.m. Till about 4, 5, when natural sunlight is out, and then they close. So these are some of the issues. So if you sum up all of this, like I have said earlier on, there's room for improvement, and your organization, my organization, and the citizens and residents of the FCT must come together and advocate to government, advocate to the National Assembly, because they are the ones who are legislating for the FCT. So call on the National Assembly to ensure timely release of the FCT budget, and also begin to touch light on the area councils, because the area councils let me run off. The area councils also have budgets. So they need to ask them what are they doing with the budgets of the area councils.
All right, thank you very much. I thought this will come at the end of the day, where you tell us on how to improve on the primary health care services. Yeah. Thank you very much for that. We're going on a short break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about the strategic meeting AO had and the questions that were raised about community health.
Yes, so Abuja Original Inhabitants Youth Empowerment Organization, AYO, now the youth organization where they for the 858 communities for inside the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. Now then they make sure say them do this 2-year program, and this program now to they talk about the things where be the rights of the original inhabitants for inside FCT. Them know they do them alone, no. Them get the support of MacArthur Foundation. Come join body with the Resource Center for Human Rights and Civic Education. Try said the reason for this so don't get program now to gather help and to increase the power of original inhabitants for inside Nigerian Federal Capital Territory. For this program, we go to use evidence to give voice and information where they come quick to make sure say Odonge government do something about this ojoro and wururu where original inhabitants they face since when government carry Nigerian capital from Lagos come Abuja. Now Abuja Original Inhabitants Youth Empowerment Organization, AYO, with the help of MacArthur Foundation, come join body with Christhead carry this informate can give you now.
Join us every Wednesday by 4 p.m. on Human Rights Radio and Television 101.1 FM and all our social media platforms. The Whole Scope, Justice for the FCTOIs.
Welcome back. This is The Whole Scope, and with me in the studio is Mr. Basi, the Executive Director of Hip City Innovation Center. And we're discussing community health. And before we went on the break, we're going to talk about the AO questions during the strategic meeting. So, Mr. Basi, before the break, we were talking about the strategic meeting AO had at different communities. And we had questions being raised about the bad shape of the PHCs and also the lack of staffing in the community health center. What do you think the government are doing about it? Who should these people report to? Is it their area council representative or the government?
Okay, thank you very much. So the issues of health is on the concurrent list. So it means that the federal government has a part to play in terms of health provision, the states and the local government. So in the case of the FCT is not a state, quote and unquote. So there's the FCT government and then there's the FCT Primary Healthcare Board. So people within communities who have observed challenges or issues with their primary healthcare can first report at the area council, because there's a health department at the area council. So you report there, but then you can also escalate your complaint to the FCT Primary Healthcare Board, who have the mandate to listen to you and take action. And then we also have the Health and Human Secretariat at the FCTA. So either of those 3 tiers that I've mentioned, or 3 levels, primary area council, FCT Primary Healthcare Board, or the Health and Human Services Department.
Okay, so thank you.
Health and Human Services Secretariat, I beg your pardon, HHSS.
Okay, so but what do you think will be the consequences of neglecting those health care?
the consequences of neglecting healthcare provision, quality healthcare provision, is there, and it's not something that should be joked with. So first, using the common parlance, health is wealth, and a prosperous nation, or a nation, is as prosperous as the health of its people. What it means is that if people are not healthy, they can't engage in economic activities that produces wealth for the country. So if you want now to cascade it down at community level, there are levels to these things. So most of our people who live in rural communities are the ones who feed us, who live in the city centers or in urban centers.
True.
So first, if you neglect their health, that they are not able to go to farm, then we have a food crisis in our hands, or food shortage, as it were. So that's one. Two, there are other services that they also provide, okay, that contributes to the growth of society. So these people need to be healthy to contribute to the growth of the society, but also to lead their own daily lives. When people are not healthy, they can't move, they become dependent, and it's really dire, like I did say. So government need to do more, need to put in more effort to do this. And again, there are levels of health. So there's the primary health, there's this secondary, and there's this tertiary. Okay, so what we have, because there's a collapse of the primary healthcare service or centers, the secondary healthcare system is overburdened, right? So issues like malaria treatments, vaccine, and the rest are things that should be handled at the primary healthcare system or healthcare level. But you find that you go to general hospitals and you find people going there with complaint of malaria, doing malaria tests. That's not by the design of our healthcare system. Those are issues that should be handled at the primary healthcare level. And that is why in every ward, political ward, there's at least one primary healthcare center. In Buhari, okay, the Buhari General Hospital is overburdened. And that is because most of the primary healthcare centers in communities that surround our hospitals are not functioning optimally. Okay, so people would rather, and then some who are functioning are not delivering on the services that they should offer. So people would rather boycott the primary healthcare centers and go straight to the general hospital, where they feel that, okay, when I go there, my needs will be met. So this is why we need to invest in health. And there's what we also call the universal health coverage. What that means is that every Nigerian should have access to healthcare. All right. So if our PHCs are not functioning optimally, it therefore means that people are not accessing it. It therefore means that we don't have health coverage for everyone. But let me also use this opportunity to address or sensitize people in rural communities that we have what we call the FCT health insurance scheme. So that scheme, just like the National Health Insurance Scheme, is targeted at FCT residents specifically, but also those who are not within formal employment. So with as little as 3,000 naira or less, you can have access to a wide range of medical services. So what the government is doing is to reduce out-of-pocket spending for people who do not have so much, the poorest of the poor. So this is something that every FCT resident, every OI should take advantage of. Yeah, so this is something that government is doing. So while we slap government with one hand and ask them to do more and do better and do right by the people, we also let people know the efforts that government is doing to ensure that everyone have access to quality healthcare service delivery.
Oh, thank you very much. So where do they go register for this healthcare scheme?
Okay, so there are accredited PHCs in every political ward.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can just move into any PHC and ask them if they have they're accredited on the FCT health insurance. But there is also the FCT health insurance office. in Abuja, you can walk into their office and make inquiries as to how you can subscribe. You can also walk into the health department of your area council to ask this question. So that's something that the people should take advantage of. Then lastly, also there's the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund that the government is providing for the people. So the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund for the FCT, there's at least one accredited PHC that is benefiting from the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund. So AMAC with 12 area councils, with 12 political wards, has 12 accredited PHC that is benefiting from the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund. And that fund covers children from age 0 to 5, pregnant women, and the elderly. So you can go to any of these accredited PHC, register with them, and you can enjoy this service. The other area councils that have 10 political wards, so it means that Buhari has 10 PHC that is benefiting from the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund, the same with Gwagwalada, and then AMAC has 12. So these are some of the initiatives of government to provide healthcare services to the people, and we're using this medium to let people know that government is doing what it can do. So even the little that government is providing, make sure that you're accessing it, and when you're not able to access it, please say something so that whoever is sitting on your right will know that people are aware. So when people are ignorant about these things or careless, that's when we also leave room for corruption. So let the people also do their own bit.
Oh, thank you. So with the grant from Makato, what would you say has the grant done or helped in the healthcare system or in service delivery? What has the grant helped to improve in promoting the rights of OIs through service delivery?
Okay, so with the support of MacArthur Foundation, information has become more prevalent to the people. I won't be here saying some of the initiatives of government without the support of the MacArthur grant, granting your organization to bring me up here to speak on this issue. On our own part, we also run a radio program, and on that radio program, at various instances, we have brought in the executive secretary of the FCT Primary Healthcare Board. We have also brought in, I don't know his full title, but we have brought in the head of the FCT Health Insurance Scheme on our program to speak on how people can access these services. And then, because of the work that we do interfacing with communities, we have also escalated some of the reports that we get from communities to the agency responsible. We've had an instance where a PHC roof was blown off by wind, and they sent us evidence, sent us pictures, and we forwarded it to the agency responsible. And as at today, I mentioned earlier on that we're also part of a consortium of partners, stakeholders in the health sector in the FCT. So at that meetings, we get to share what our findings are, from the field. We also get to hear about what other partners are doing, what the government themselves are doing, and then we can also pass that information back to the people. So these are some of the opportunities that the project has thrown up to us and also to the people.
Thank you. Last but not the least is your recommendations on how to alleviate these issues on healthcare.
Okay, so how do we move forward? So first, health is our collective responsibility. Health is our collective right. So on the side of government, there has to be a deliberate desire and political will to invest in the health sector. Okay, I just before I came to the studio, I was reading a report of the FCT budget over the last 5 years, from 2015 or 2016 to 2020, last COVID year. And for every year, the estimated budget and the budget released were never equal. So you find that it's maybe 11 billion or 11 whatever The millions has been budgeted for, but in terms of release, there's always a drop. So we need to call on government to invest more in health. When we invest in health, we don't necessarily have to look at other issues because people are healthy, people can go about creating wealth, creating jobs for themselves. But when everyone is down, everybody looks up to governments, to provide all of these things. So that is why government really needs to invest in health. So we're calling on government, especially the National Assembly, to ensure the timely approval of the FCT budget. We'll call on the FCT FCT minister to also timely release of the budget to the line agency, which is the FCT Primary Healthcare Board, and then to the line agency that is responsible, that's the Primary Healthcare Board. They need to do more. First is they need to take conduct a needs assessment across all of the PHCs. Know what are the needs of each PHC, all right, and then make provision to provide those things. But most importantly, to them, I think it is I think the agency is the Human and Health Services Secretariat. They need to recruit more professionals to man the PHCs, because many of the PHCs, you rarely find a doctor. You rarely find a doctor. Then you would rarely find a nurse in some of those places. What you have are midwives and more of CHUs. So we need to recruit more people to take on this task in providing services to the people. The infrastructure needs to be done right? Wash facilities need to be in place in many of these PHCs. And then to the people themselves in communities, they need to take ownership of the projects that come to them. So if the government gives you a structure, do well to protect that structure. I know that this is your own share of what government is providing, because there are not enough resources. For every community that have gotten a primary healthcare center, they should also do something to contribute, to how that PHC is run. Then too, they need to be responsible. If you have a PHC and there is an employed nurse to that PHC, don't just sit and say, I went there yesterday and the nurse was not there. If you follow the trend, the nurse does not report to work on Monday, Tuesday, and only comes on Fridays and maybe once in a month. Report. It's within your rights. Go and make a formal report and say, this person does not show up at his or her duty post when they should. Because of this, we don't want this person in our community. And the government will do well to either retrench the person, or maybe we deploy the person to any other place or wherever it is. But don't keep quiet, because at the end of the day, when these personnel are not there and there's an emergency, there's a need, it is you, the people, who suffer the most.
Thank you very much, Mr. Basu, for this interesting topic. And to our audience, thank you for listening. And I hope we, as the original inhabitants of FCT, will take responsibility in improving our community health. This program is brought to you by Abuja Original Inhabitants Youth Empowerment Organization, AO, with support from Makato through Christ. You can follow us on our social media handle at AO in Twitter, which is spelled AOIYEO. I take that again, AOIYEO. On Instagram and Facebook is AO Network. Thank you for joining us. Until next time. Ciao.